Hi, good afternoon and welcome today to those who are new to our webinars and welcome back to our regulars. I'm Sophie Lewis, Marketing Executive at Equiteq, and today Adam Blatchford's going to be presenting on intellectual property and how it supports growth in your business. He's going to be presenting for about 20-25 minutes and then we're going to do a quick Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, please use the question control panel on the right hand side. Over to you, Adam.
Great. Thanks very much, Sophie. Well, welcome everyone. As Sophie mentioned, we're going to be talking about intellectual property in IP is the pixie dust that can make your profits fly. Without further ado, just very quickly, Equiteq is an M&A advisory firm. We focus exclusively on the consulting sector, and that is people businesses that are selling their knowledge and expertise for a premium price. My name is Adam Blatchford. I've been with Equiteq for a little over 5 years now. I mainly work with shareholders and management teams to build the value in their businesses in preparation for sale. And as Sophie mentioned, if you have any questions about today's webinar or about anything else that Equiteq does, please don't hesitate to get in touch. So first, I'm just going to give you a quick briefing of what we'll cover today. We'll start with a bit of an introduction about smart scaling. So this webinar is part of a series of connected articles, blogs, and webinars that are about how to scale smart, which I'll explain momentarily. Then I'll be giving you a definition of what we mean by intellectual property, by IP. I'll tell you a bit about why it's valuable both to you in running your business and to potential buyers of your business. And at the end of that section, we're going to have a short poll. So we'll pose a question which you can reply to. We'll then display the results, discuss them a little bit, and that way we can make sure you're all awake still at that point. Then we'll follow that up by looking at some of the actions you can take in your business to build and promote valuable IP that will improve your profits and your equity value. And then we'll wrap up with a few key messages and then hopefully have some time for questions, assuming I don't ramble on too much. And as Sophie mentioned, either use the little panel on the right-hand side to send in your questions if you've got them. Okay. So smart scaling is ensuring business growth translates into equity value growth by avoiding mistakes and missteps. So we're saying here that generally a growing business is positive. Scaling your business will usually increase your value, but not all growth is equal. So you want to make sure that you're focusing not just on scaling revenue and profits, but also on growing your equity value. So the way we suggest you do that is by considering what buyers are interested in. So you look at the decisions you're making and the shape of the firm you're building through the eyes of a buyer to be sure that you're helping grow your value rather than eroding it. You're using a buyer lens, if you will, to view your firm and your decisions. And the great thing about intellectual property in this context, why I'm excited about this webinar in the series in particular, is because IP is just a win-win here. So long as it's aligned to your strategy, it can grow value, be interesting to a buyer, and it can support your profitable growth at the same time. So first, I just want to clarify quickly what we mean by intellectual property. So we're talking about IP here in a broad sense. This is not just trademarks or patents. In fact, most of the time in consultancies, intellectual property is in the form of trade secrets. So examples of this would be process maps, methodologies, databases, case studies, even software tools. And some of those could be trademarked, but they don't have to be. They can still add value to your business. A simple definition we've got at the top there for you is IP is recorded knowledge that can be used to generate profit. And while that seems simple, there's some important parts to it. So the recorded piece is important because that means it can be used and worked on by multiple people at the same time. It also means it's then a business asset. So it not only has a commercial value, but it can have an equity value. And if it's just knowledge that's in someone's head, so for example, if your sales director has knowledge in their head of contacts and companies, it's not intellectual property. It doesn't build your equity value. It has value to the company, but it doesn't build your equity value. Whereas once you've recorded that into, say, a CRM system, it can be referenced, it can be tracked, it can be used by others, and so you're starting to build value within the firm. And there's 3 types of intellectual property, which you can see on the screen. There is this is just a way of conceptually thinking about intellectual property. There's the intellectual property to deliver your services, there's the intellectual property you need to market your services, and there's the intellectual property you need to run your business, so much more internal focus. And there's, as you can see, there's some crossover and overlap in the edges of these. Mostly today we're talking about delivery IP, but other sort of bits will be touched on, and that's generally because delivery IP is where you can build some of the greatest value to buyers. So we're now going to consider IP from a slightly different perspective, which is in terms of the benefits that it delivers both to you and to a potential buyer. So if you will, this is a value perspective on the IP. And there's 4 key things we're going to talk about. So differentiation, which is how IP can help you stand out. Leverage, so how you can deliver more with less. Scalability, how you can grow faster and more easily. And risk mitigation, how the IP can protect you from various risks. So we're going to start with differentiation. This is all about standing out from the crowd. So a key way that IP can differentiate you is if you're using it to deliver more value to your clients. So potentially in significantly faster results or better cost savings, you can be using IP to help you deliver a superior service to a client. And if your services are underpinned by IP and they're delivering that clear, significant benefit to a client, then you will be differentiated. There's no doubt about that. And that means, in addition, you can then command much higher fees for the work you're doing, which of course can translate into higher profitability. But you need to make a strategic decision at a high level first of how you as a business are going to be differentiated, and then build the IP to support that. So it needs to come from a strategic point and then feed into the direction of the IP. So first, that will allow you to outcompete your competitors, because you can use IP to build recognition in the market and with clients that you're the thought leader, you're the expert in whatever your chosen space is. That's differentiation. And then second, once you're there, you can help protect your market position with the IP, because if no one else can do the work as well as you, or as quickly as you can, or has the level of knowledge within your specific sector, then you're building barriers to other firms entering your market. You're building barriers to people becoming competitors, because you're just unassailable. No one could argue by that point that against you being the expert. You've got the IP to prove it. Why would a client go to anyone else when you're the go-to person? And you can see there's some interaction here between the delivery IP and the marketing IP. They sort of both work in differentiating, helping you to differentiate your firm. And importantly, all of this affects your desirability to a buyer, because by differentiating yourself with the help of IP, you are no longer just a me too kind of firm. You can stand out, and that's really what buyers want. They'll, of course, when trying to acquire, go into due diligence and review figures and look at profits and all of that. But earlier on, what first makes them stand up and take notice is what you do. And if it's interesting, if no one else can do it, then you're going to be of interest to them, and you're going to have the potential to command a premium price at an equity event. So next up, we're going to talk about leverage. This is using more junior resources to deliver higher quality work at a lower cost. So here we're talking about the pyramid model. So Accenture being a very good example. They've got a very wide pyramid, but there are nuances in every sector and every different type of consulting. There's a lot of a range, but in general, as a general principle, a pyramid is how most consultancies need to be organized. It's the finders, minders, grinders model. Finders at the top, finding the work, minders, managing the relationships, and grinders doing the work at the bottom or delivering. But without IP, that pyramid really is just a deck of cards, because you need people to be able to do the work, and you need to support those people and those team members with a solid base of intellectual property to underpin their work so they're able to deliver the required services. No matter what level they are in the pyramid, you can support them in in doing that work with IP. And the way the IP achieves this is it makes the full knowledge of the firm available to your junior staff. It's packaged, it's in a product that they can then use and learn from, whether that's a process or a methodology, and then they can deliver a better product to the client, a better service to the client. And secondly, that means the delivery costs less, because the junior resources are able to deliver a comparable product that would usually require a much more experienced and expensive resource to deliver that same level of work. So obviously those together, they can help improve your profitability, and that's obviously a key benefit to your firm. But these things also are benefits to buyers in the way they create value in your firm because they're beneficial to buyers. So this model is essential in a larger consulting firm, including whether that's your firm or whether that's the buyer firm, which will probably be orders of magnitude larger, because to achieve their margins, they need to be organized in this way. They need a leverage model. And if your operating model is a completely different shape than a buyer's leveraged pyramid operating model, then that can potentially cause complications, issues, red flags when you come to sale. So by aligning your model to the pyramid, you can be much more able to integrate with a buyer, which from a buyer's perspective means that you're much more attractive. So the other way that's positive with buyers is profitability per consultant is a key metric that a lot of buyers use just in the early stage to sort of review firms and understand them and compare them with their own firm. So if you've got strong profitability per consultant, you're in a good place. So by delivering a leverage model and supporting you to build that leverage model, the IP can make you both more attractive to buyers and more profitable in your own firm. So next up is scalability. This is about building the business faster, more easily, at a lower cost. So you can use IP to improve your scalability, and that's all based on the concept of replicating a person is difficult, whereas replicating a process is far easier. So in consulting, we've got it a lot better than some industries. We don't need to build factories or new machines or anything like that to scale up, but we do rely on getting good people, and that can be a limiting factor in the growth of a firm. Whether you're struggling to find the right talent or the right timing, whether that's junior, mid-level, senior. But if the firm is based on IP, it is inherently more scalable. It eases those limits because the IP can be replicated in a way that an individual cannot be. So the way this works is IP can help you reduce your reliance on expensive talent. So if you've got the training IP, you've got the delivery IP, you can help your current people to deliver the work rather than having to find the experienced but usually very expensive grey-haired consultant in inverted commas. They're often very hard to find and, as I say, expensive. Similarly, you can reduce your need for subcontractors because you can cope with the peaks or the specialist requirements that you need to deliver by supporting your own people to do that work, supported by the knowledge, the firm's overall knowledge built into IP, rather than having to go out to the market and pay higher prices for a subcontractor. It also helps you to reduce your bench time, because if your team, your pool of people can be more flexible, they've got the ability to take on a broader range of work, so there's less time sitting on the bench. All of those things feed into allowing higher profitability, which is good for you and for buyers. And then the second way that IP helps you with scalability is basically by giving you the ability to scale faster. It does this by allowing you to onboard much faster if you've got the IP to support that onboarding process and to support the new people in getting straight into clients and delivering, because the way your firm's way of doing it and the skills and knowledge they need to deliver the work is packaged in that IP. It can also allow you to upskill your teams much faster, and it can reduce your hiring risk. So there's less risk of mistakenly taking someone on who can't do the job, because you can guarantee that at least a portion of that role they can do, because it's packaged in your IP. It's there already. You can provide them the ability to do that, whether or not they had it when they walked through the door. And those things are of a benefit clearly to you, but they are even more of a benefit to a potential buyer, because usually a buyer will want to take your services and the things you do and roll them out to their generally much larger client base. And if you've got your IP packaged in a way that lets them do that very easily, they're probably going to want to train their people in how to do these things and get them out delivering it very quickly. Then the buyer can realize the benefits much faster, and therefore that makes your firm much more valuable to them if it has the IP that allows them to do that. So it's building value in your firm. So the fourth thing we're going to talk about is risk mitigation. There's two areas that IP can mitigate risk. There's people risk and in quality assurance. Now, people risk is mainly about key staff leaving. So we're really talking here about any reliance on an individual, whatever level. If they're leaving, could mean your firm loses knowledge either about how you do things, or about clients, or lose relationships. That's a problem for your firm. But you can mitigate that by packaging the knowledge they have into intellectual property. It's a physical representation of that knowledge that is then retained by your business, even if they leave, or if, God forbid, something bad happened to them. The business is protected because it retains the methodologies or CRM contacts or whatever else that item might be. And then IP can actually help your people risk in a couple of other ways. It makes your consultants want to stay with your business much more, because it makes their job easier because they've got the IP to support them in what they're doing, and it means they provide more value to their clients when they're backed up with IP, and that's motivational to them because they're doing a good job, and it's a disincentive to go anywhere else, because if they were in another firm or on their own, they wouldn't be able to deliver that same level of value to clients that they can do when supported by your knowledge and IP. And it also attracts recruits to your firm, because if they see that you're differentiated, you're doing work in exciting ways that others can't, they're attracted to that. Consultants are curious. They want to see clients succeed. If you do it better than someone else, that's attractive. So the IP can allow you to attract, retain, and develop high-quality consultants, and that mitigates your staff risk. Then in quality assurance, that's really about reducing the risk of failed delivery. So you can guarantee the quality of your firm's work because it's based on intellectual property, whether that's a methodology or a process or software, but the delivery is consistent. It won't require rework on a project. It doesn't rely on a single fantastic mercurial person to find a solution. It's replicable every time. And importantly, the client knows that they're going to get the right standard of work. And that has an additional benefit from a selling perspective, because we sell services. You can't go into a shop and feel it and touch it before you've bought it. It's uncertain by its very nature. So, if certain clients, especially inexperienced clients of buying consulting, they can struggle with that. So the IP provides a certainty around the value you'll deliver. It's a tangibility to an otherwise intangible service. So now we're going to do our poll. So please bear with me. I've personally not done this before, but we're going to bring up a question for you. And we want to know which of these 4 benefits that we've talked about that IP can deliver would be most valuable to your business right now. And so you can just click and select on your screen which one it is. So, is it differentiation? Do you need to differentiate yourself from your competitors? Is leverage important? Are you struggling with profitability? Is scalability actually what you think would be most beneficial to you at the moment? Are you constrained actually by trying to resource your growth? You can't find the right people with the right skills. Or are there risks in your business that you're aware of but are unsolved, that are sort of causing you sleepless nights at the moment in running things? You know, where do you believe IP could be most beneficial to you at the moment? And I'll give everyone a little while longer to answer this. A few more seconds. I'll take that time to have a sip of tea to keep us going. So I think that's probably about enough time for everyone. So if we now have a quick look at the results, which should appear on the screen, there we go. Differentiation seems to be the clear winner. About half of you thought that was most important, followed by a bit of scalability and then risk mitigation and leverage. So that's interesting. So as I said before, ultimately you've got to choose what your differentiation is at a strategic level. You know, you've got to look at your markets, your clients, and use your knowledge to understand actually what's going to be your differentiator, and then use the IP, build that IP to support what differentiates you, whether that's specialism in a sector, whether that's efficiency in a process, or reducing time in terms of, say, migrating data if that's what you did, or even if it's a completely new approach to delivering whatever services you deliver that provides just fantastic results. If you can then package that and replicate that so that it can be delivered more efficiently by your firm and by others, that's very beneficial. So in my wording there, I deliberately sort of skewed that by asking what were about your issues right now, what could be useful to you right now, to highlight some of the benefits that IP can bring in the short term. But actually, that buyer lens that I talked about earlier, to consider your decisions is just as important. So to make sure you're not just focused on short-term immediate needs, but that you're focused on what's going to build value in your firm. And actually, differentiation is, as I've mentioned, a very strong way of building value in your firm. So that's good. That's why, as I said before, IP is a win-win. The fact that we've chosen differentiation, it's both as a benefit to your business in the immediate term, but it also builds value. We're thinking about, in this sense, the benefits that IP brings. By approaching it from that angle, we can be sure that the IP we're creating will be building equity value as well as whatever other benefits we're looking for, because you're focusing on the areas that buyers are interested in, the differentiation, scalability, leverage. So that's good. Okay, thank you very much for that. We're now going to move on to our next slide. I've spent a little while talking about the benefits of IP to you and to buyers, and the way it can help you grow and be scaling smart. And it all sounds great, and so you're probably thinking, great, I want some of that. How do I manage IP to increase my equity value? So fundamentally, the first thing is it's got to be aligned to your strategy. That's absolutely key. All the other actions you're going to take rely on that alignment. Otherwise, your efforts will just be misdirected. So that we want to keep in mind. And now we're going to have a look at some key specific actions you can do. So as I say, at the top, guided by business strategy. But the way you create that alignment and maintain that alignment is making sure first that someone at board level is not only responsible but accountable for intellectual property. The management of it, the creation, the use, the communication, that has to be the first step. It doesn't have to be their only role. I'm not saying you have to go out and recruit a chief knowledge officer, but around that boardroom table, someone needs to be able to stand up and say, yes, that's me, I've got this covered. And that in turn creates the impetus behind it as well. That person is driving it forward for the good of the business and as shareholders for the good to build your equity value. So they're providing the governance, the impetus, but of course they can't do it all. So you're going to have to involve your people. Now, most consultancies don't have R&D departments. We're not big pharma. I'm not saying you should do, but it means that innovation needs to come from somewhere else, and that is your people. You have teams of smart people, consultants in your organizations. You need to go and talk to those people. See what they're already using. What interesting ways have they found to solve problems in clients that you can package and reuse across your teams? You know, they will already be creating and using this stuff, often without thinking this is IP, this is valuable to the business, just thinking, well, this is helpful for my work. So you have got to have those conversations. And they're motivational to the people, because it's highlighting to them that what they're doing is important to this business. You're effectively crowdsourcing the collective knowledge of your business and using it to build tangible value. But without the strategy, everyone will go in different directions. So that board accountability has to come first. You know, these are in order, 1, 2, 3. You've got to start with creating accountability, then you've got to involve people, create buy-in before you try and embed the processes. That's then the next step. So you've got to create a cycle of continuous improvement, really, embed that cycle into the firm. There's a life cycle to IP. You've got to plan it, create it, communicate it to the people that need to know about it, and then those people need to use it or monetize it effectively, you know, use the knowledge to create profit. And then once that's happened, you need to review it. That cycle needs to loop back round, review it, and potentially retire it, and feed back into planning what's the next thing you need. The good thing is you're probably not starting from scratch. As I say, there'll be a lot of this stuff already going on in your organization. So you might need to just do an audit as a first step to see what there is around that you can be using. You know, and other things that you'll need, like knowledge management processes, knowledge transfer processes. You'll have things already going on in these areas, so you can just sort of segue and fit these things together and input IP into that. So our key takeaways from today, if you go away and just remember just a few things, these are the things that I want you to remember. So IP can support profitable growth while mitigating risk. As I said, it's a win-win. It's just great. It can allow you to use more junior resources to deliver higher quality work at a lower cost. So that's the leverage point. It's, you know, it boosts your profitability. It's valuable to you in that sense. And you've got to align the IP to your strategy. That's the sort of fundamental underpinning to all of it. That's that one is really very important. So the action, what do you do next when you get off this today? Just start the conversation. You don't have to sort of get all the way through the process now, but just start that conversation at board level. Talk about accountability. Decide where that's going to go, and with your people. As I say, you've got big teams, smart people out there solving problems with clients, creating ideas. That is value. They're creating value in your firm. You need to capture that value. Otherwise, don't just let it drift away, because it will disappear. You've got to capture it. And I think if we've got time, we'll possibly do a question or two now.
Okay, so we've had a couple come through, but I think the most interesting one actually is about when you're using your employees to build IP, but if their delivery staff are mostly subcontractors, who then owns the IP? Like, how do you deal with subcontractors and in that sense?
Okay, thank you. So yes, so in that case, the ownership of the IP is going to depend on the agreement you've got with your subcontractors. So because they're trade secrets, they don't have a sort of natural legal protection as patents and things do. So it needs to be written into the contracts who owns the things that are created as part of their work. It might mean you need to potentially update some of your subcontractor contracts to include those clauses if they don't already. But it's important to sort of have that done at the beginning to avoid issues later on. You want to do that before any work starts to make sure it's very clear who owns that stuff rather than disagreements later. That's in contrast to, say, employees, which is sort of the flip side to this question. Generally, they'll already have clauses in their contracts saying everything they create is owned by the business. It might be that your subcontract contracts say that, but it may not. So it's worth checking, and in employees as well. The other thing you can do to make it work better with subcontractors and with employees is incentivize them. People need a reason to do things, and for employees that can be a recognition, or even just creating the time, the sort of setting aside utilization time to spend on IP. With subcontractors, it might mean you could try offering a sort of a flat fee bonus at the end of a project for them to write up and sort of document the IP and sort of make sure it's back in the organization and communicated, or giving them, a sort of a reduced rate for internal work in which they do that. So yes, it will depend on the contract, and in terms of making that work, you've got to make them want to do it, and you've got to incentivize people, because it's important for your business, and therefore you've got to get everyone on board with that and make them believe in it too.
Okay, thanks for that, Adam. So I've just had quite a few questions come through, which is great, but we have run out of time, and I'm very aware that people might have other meetings or appointments to get to. So anyone who posted a question, I'll ask Adam to come back to you directly on after this webinar. If you need to get in touch with myself, you can see Adam's email up there on the screen. My email is sophie.lewis@equiteq.com. Also, just a reminder, if you're not a member, please do join Equiteq Edge. You'll get free articles. There's even a handout. If you go to the handout panel, actually, we've got the PDF of one of our articles that this webinar is based on. There's a few others in the series, so you'll be able to find those on the website. And also, we update our blog which is based around what people have asked us on this webinar. So that will be out probably in 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe. So keep an eye out on the blog. A recording will also be available tomorrow. So just thanks for attending, everybody, and thanks, Adam, for presenting.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.